Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. We're going to wait for Eric to hop on here and get started with our talk in a few minutes. All right, seems to be having some technical difficulties getting Eric on here. We're going to see if we can get him here in a second. Oh, let's see, that tried that. All right, it says he's unable to join. That's lovely. There he is.
Gotta let me in, Perry.
It's weird because I was inviting you, and then it said it basically asked me to accept your request. So I think we were both doing things at the same time, but that's all right. All good. All right, guys. So today we are going to be talking about training after 40. And, before we dive into this, there's a couple things. This doesn't just apply to people that are over 40. This is just honest to goodness, good training advice. Yes, there are some specific things that we want to cover, especially when you're working with individuals that are a little bit older. But at the same time, it's just a lot of it just has to do with really, really smart training in general and making sure that you're not doing things that are going to be counterproductive. And really the goal with exercise is about stress and adaptation, right? We always want to focus on having positive adaptations, not negative ones. So a lot of today is just going to be training advice in general, but there are going to be some specific things that we're gonna focus on when it comes to training individuals over 40 years old. So all right, what do we want to start with, Mr. Degatti? You were probably just doing a lecture for a whole bunch of people, weren't you?
Yeah, just finished up a little presentation for the Northeast ACSM conference, talking about recovery, which we're obviously going to talk quite a bit about today in terms of this population. So, kind of two things. We're coming up with our topics for Instagram Live. Some of it is feedback from you guys. So if you have any things that you want us to cover, please put it in the chat, or if you have any questions today, put it in the chat. We'd love to answer your questions. But two things kind of prompted this one and specifically for this week. One was a post I came across talking about variability and the big difference between training people, 40 plus versus training high school athletes. Like, most high school athletes are going through a similar everyday experience, right? They get up and they all go to school together all day, and they're playing the same sport. So you have a pretty narrowed down demographic. But even when you're with that demographic, there's still some variability within there, right? You have some kids who are hypermobile, you have some kids that are super stiff, you have some kids that have a bunch of years of training under their belt, and other kids who don't. But it's relatively narrow window of things you got to address. Now, you fast forward 20 years, and there's so many different things that person's going to bring to the table. So you have that person who has the same chronological age, but they've not worked out in 20 years. They've been working out for the last 20 years. They've done all endurance work. They've done all strength work. They have different careers, right? Some people are, some guys, doing masonry work all day, and another one's doing executive work, and they're doing planes and trains and automobiles. And so, there's so much variability in what that archetype is going to look like, is that it takes that much more thought into what your training is going to be, right? So, in terms of that variability, like, that's really where the key to starting things off with a good assessment and figuring out where's this person at, and kind of like we talk about in the course, like, what's their past, present, and future look like. So, so the first thing, like, we talk about in the course, we have a whole section on the key questions. So, like, what are some of the key questions you want to know when you see somebody who's walking through your door who is 40, 50, 60 years old?
Yeah, I mean, the big ones are injury history, medical history, medications when that's a pertinent piece of information that we need to know, training experience, schedule, um, frequency, duration of training sessions. I mean, these are all the things that we need to uncover and dig a little bit deeper on, even before we get into that whole musculoskeletal assessment component or evaluation component. Because again, we understand we want to try to run people through the eval because we want to see how they move, etc. But even before that, we have to ask the right questions to make sure that we are starting to think about what is going to be the appropriate training program scenario for them, because there are just so many variables that we have to consider, especially when you're working with people that have a lot more responsibilities. A lot of people in their 40s have kids, and they've got full-time jobs, and maybe there's sports, so they're running around like crazy. So we almost have to look at their lifestyle prior to the actual assessment process, which is obviously whether you're using some sort of musculoskeletal assessment or a movement screen or some other evaluation. But we need to really just know a little bit more about their life and their background, even before we get into the nuts and bolts of actually, digging in to see how they move, et cetera.
Yeah, so going kind of back to that, we talk about that checklist of things we look at and put it into, or we got to look into their past. What's their, everything you said, training history, injury history, those things. We look at their present. That's what you talked about. Let's do an assessment of where you're at now. We also got to look into their future. Like, what is the environment that you're looking to get into, and what is your expectation? And someone put in there, thinking about as far as their goals. Where are we looking to go? And the one thing I could tell you about this population, and doing this as long as we have, is the goals of the 40 plus population are very different than they were 20 years ago when I started. And they're vastly different than, when we were younger. Like, I can remember, and it's crazy when you look at old pictures or old videos of your grandparents, right? And you thought, like, when they, I remember going to my grandparents' 50th birthday parties and stuff, and you're thinking, like, wow, they are old, and so, like, they were pretty much like, this is it, this is time for the rocking chair, and they really started their physical decline at that point, where I have clients who are in their 60s who still want to do triathlons, who still want to play tennis at a high level, who still want to, train at a relatively high intensity. So the expectation of what 40, 50, 60, 70 looks like is very, very different than it was even 10 years ago. So realize that those expectations are going to be different. And so because of that, that's even a whole nother element that we need to add to it, because they want to push that much further, but they also have all these years of all this history that have accumulated it makes their unique fingerprint. That's going to make that a very unique process. And then you also have, okay, you talked about, like, what's their training history, and so that's going to dictate a lot of their two things. One is their rate of learning and their rate of adaptation, right? So let's take that person who, let's say you have two people come in the door, one, and both of them haven't worked out in 20 years, right? They're mid 40s. They say, I haven't worked out in 20 years. I need to get myself back in shape. One of them never did anything athletically, right? They have no background of any kind of physical activity whatsoever. The other one is, your Al Bundy, who scored 4 touchdowns in the state championship game, and, had a 6-pack when they're 18, but hasn't done a thing since. That's going to have an impact on what they're going to do in terms of their adaptability, because that second person has those motor neurons are in there somewhere. All right, whether it's a positive or negative thing, whether it's a positive thing to say they may learn exercises, they may learn movements a lot quicker, but they also have a lot of bad baggage that they come with, and where they might have done a bunch of really crappy training that you have to undo, right? So with that, from all right, we got to start exercising. Tell me some of the things that you noticed about, like, where I start, how quickly I progress, how much do I need to maybe regress. Like, we're starting out, we're gonna work out exercise selection and all those factors.
Yeah, well, obviously their goals and the information that we get from their evaluation is going to dictate programming, and then a lot of it is just the communication within the session that I think a lot of people don't really understand is, I always tell people, listen, I've never worked with you before, so I don't know what you're currently capable of. So you need to give me feedback, and I'm going to be asking you lots of questions on, hey, how does this feel? How fatigued are you? Do you feel like you can go up? Do you feel like this is challenging enough for you? I always ask about, how many more do you think you could do with this weight? And I'm constantly having a conversation with my early clients to make sure I get a feel for what they're capable of, because we want to put them in a scenario where they're challenged but they're successful, right? And we need to find that sweet spot to make sure that we're not murdering them with a bunch of volume, but at the same time, we're not doing so little that it's not having more of an impact than taking a 10-minute walk to the car. So there's this constant communication process that needs to happen, and it is an art and a science, because most people have their sort of guidelines when they start a program. It's like, okay, we're going to do squats, and they say they're going to do 3 sets of 10. Everybody tends to start with 3 sets of 10 on stuff, right? That's just kind of what happens. But just depending on the athletes and their need, that's a really, really bad strategy, right? Because I always tell my athletes and my clients, hey, listen, I have a direction that we're going to go, and I have a template. And this is not a perfectly written program. And I even say that to them. I use the owner's manual analogy. Hey, listen, you're not a car. You don't come with an owner's manual, so I don't know every single thing about you. So this is going to be a process in which, as we work together, I'm going to be making changes. And it takes me probably a week or two to really dial in the session, because I'm constantly evaluating, okay, did this work or did that not work? Because listen, I'd like to tell you that everything I write is perfect and I get amazing results every single time for the first time. It just simply does not happen. So there is this process in which we need to constantly communicate to make sure that we're looking at how the client is responding, we're interacting with them, and we're getting their feedback to make sure that we're getting this influx of information, so we're making better decisions as we go on this journey with our clients and athletes.
Yeah, and there's a couple points you touched on, and most of what you just said, like, that applies to everybody, right? Doesn't matter whether you're 15 or 55, right? But how does that become unique for that, 35, 40, 50-year-old individual is in terms of managing that volume. And like you talked about, when you just take a blowtorch to them, one is that 20 something may actually gravitate towards that and want that more, where that 40, 50-year-old is like, I don't want that. Like, yeah. I don't want to, some of them will. You'll have your type A's that don't want that, may not want that. And more importantly, they maybe can't have that, because here's the reality. If I'm starting with someone who's a mom of a toddler, right? And I'm going to now take the blowtorch, and now they can't bend over to pick up their baby or pick up toys or do the things that they need to do. Like that 18-month-old doesn't say, oh, I'll just sit here and watch TV today because mom's, glutes and hamstrings are sore. No, they're going to still want to run and do all the things that they need to do. So they don't have the luxury. Like, you don't have the luxury of, like, if you're a college kid and you kind of walk stiff into class, like, who cares, right? Yeah. But you can't be an executive going out and I have to go play, have a meeting on the golf course tomorrow, and now all of a sudden I can't even touch my toes. Like, that's not an option. So we have to be that much more delicate, that it can't be this cycle of, I'm just going to beat you down and then, hey, your recovery's on you. And you wanted to work out hard. You said you want to look better in your jeans. This is the price you got to pay. That bullshit doesn't fly with a more mature individual. They don't need that. And that kind of lends itself to kind of the next thing I want to address is, well, how much of any of these things do you need, right? So if we looked at a bunch of different buckets, we said, well, how much, I had this conversation with one of the guys I work with. He's 62. Guy's in great shape. And he said, I have to kind of change my mentality, because he really struggles with his mobility, and he's had a bunch of pain issues that we've been able to clear up. And he's feeling great. And he's like, I kind of keep setting myself back, and I kind of get in the old mentality that I need to bench press. I need to do these things that I've always done. Whereas the workout we did with him was more mobility biased. It was more movement biased. And he's like, I think this is what my workouts need to look like. And I said, no, it doesn't mean that you can't ever bench press, but there comes a point like, well, is that going to get you closer to your goal? And is strength really the one thing that you're missing? And like, how much is enough? So like strength, how much do I need of strength? How much do I need of cardiovascular fitness? Well, do I need enough to keep my heart healthy? Do I need enough because you're going to go run a 10K? Do I need enough because you're going to go play in a pickup soccer league, right? So how much is enough? And even with body composition, like they want to look a little better, but they don't need to be six pack on the beach better, right? So talk to like, you know, changing your focus on what your minimums and your optimums and maximums are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also too, to another thing to consider is those goals may change depending on the season and the ebb and flows of their life, right? And like you said, there's an individual that had that sort of, hey, I need to bench, I need to do these big compound lifts, but it's not making him towards his goal. But again, there's because everybody's got a little bit of that when I say ego, not in a bad way, but listen, everybody, you know, you wouldn't find too many people that say I don't care about looking good. Like most people care about, you know, being at a certain point where they feel comfortable with their bodies, and that's a whole nother discussion. But I think it's a process that there's, like I said, there will be ebb and flows, and what it boils down to is, are you getting, like you said, you're getting your clients closer to their goals, and at the same time, are you doing things that they feel better in their general day-to-day life? Because like you said, if you murder someone with a workout and they can't, you know, pick their kid up the next day, that's not going to go so well. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that those individuals can't train hard. It just means you're probably going to have to slow that process down, and you're going to have to build that foundation in a much slower fashion. So when you do start to get a little bit more intensity into the workouts, it's not going to ruin them for the next couple of days. And I think early on, I think the most important thing for new clients is they should be leaving your training session feeling better than when they came in. And that to me is the ultimate goal, because that's what's going to get them coming back, right? I mean, but there are times like, you know, depending on the individual and what they're going to be asking of their body, that yeah, you're going to have to push them really hard. If someone's like, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to do a marathon, well, guess what? You're going to have to run. Like that's just the reality of it. You're going to have to log those miles. And there's no two way about it. You can't just dive into a marathon and see how it goes. It's not going to work. So I really think it does go back to that conversation, but just having that constant communication with those individuals is the key to getting the desired outcome that you're looking for. And I think too many people take their own bias. We talk about confirmation bias all the time. It's like, you know, they want to move better. They want to be more flexible, but you're throwing, you know, not us, but someone's just throwing a bunch of heavy back squats and heavy deadlifts. It's like, well, cool. Yeah, you're doing those movements and you're getting stronger, but that was never your goal to begin with. And now all you have is a stiff low back and you're popping Advil. So, you know, I think we really just, to me, it always comes down to that constant communication. I wrote a blog a while ago, and maybe we'll share it. It's called The Evaluation Never Ends. And if you're working with someone, a lot of people think that the evaluation is the first session, and it is not. You should be constantly evaluating how your clients move within the session. You should be asking them how their weekend went. Because listen, if you're a 40-year-old weekend warrior, you went out and you did your first weekend softball leave and you torched a hamstring because you decided to sprint to first base. Well, guess what? Monday morning, maybe we're not doing our lunges. So I think it's that constant communication and constant check-in that is a vital part of the successful outcomes for your clientele.
Yeah, so kind of got a couple of points, directions I can go with that one. The one is I've recently had a run of people coming in for some evaluation and coaching because of a referral from a doctor friend of mine of a guy. It all started with a guy who's in a 40 plus men's soccer team, pretty competitive soccer team. And he came in because he had an ankle injury that just never resolved itself. He went through PT, never got to where it wanted to be. And he wasn't back to where he wanted to be playing soccer. He wanted to play competitive soccer, where, you know, previously that might have been the person, or even currently might be the person that says, oh, maybe this is my cue to stop playing soccer. But we've had some great success with him, got him back, and he was pain free. And he's like, my whole team needs you. And he said, basically, I got a bunch of 40 plus guys. And he goes, we have 2 ACLs. We have shoulder issues. We have a ton of low back issues. We got people yanking hamstrings every week because they want to put these demands, but they're not ready for those demands. So how do we prepare them for those? That's kind of a whole nother thing, right? And that goes to talking about the future. What's the environment you want to get to? And if you don't ask that question, then you just assume, all right, I'm just going to give this person a general fitness program, not realizing they need to be able to accelerate, decelerate, change direction. And so that adds a whole nother layer into your training and what you need to look for. And then you also need to look for the fact that he's not training with you to get really good at training with you, right? He's not there for you. He's there for himself. And so let's say we're going to say, all right, we're going to make, you know, a Thursday your leg day, and we're going to do just 14 sets of lower body leg stuff. But he has a Friday night, soccer game. You just ruined his soccer game. The whole reason he works out is so he could play soccer, and you just ruined it. So,
Yeah.
like factoring in, okay, what are the things you need to do throughout the day? And so whether it's are you a bricklayer all day? In terms of your career, what do you need to do in terms of family stuff? Are you caring for an elderly parent? Are you still chasing after toddlers? Or those types of things in your home life, and then also in your leisure. What is it things that you do? And then finding that out, and then also factoring that into your exercise programming. You have a Peloton at home. You do that 4 or 5 days a week. Okay, well, that makes it easy for me. I don't need to program your cardiovascular stuff, but I also need to make sure that that's going to affect your readiness. And so how do I consider those things? So, those are a bunch of considerations. And then other considerations that are, we're talking about all these wild individual variabilities you have, but there are some general things that we know that are going to be basic boxes you check. Like our whole course, right? We made checklists. It's just a course full of checklists. And so when we look at things, the checklist, probably the first thing we want to look at, and you do a really awesome job of doing it in your group classes, is looking at the checklist of mobility. Do you at least have enough movement to go through to get into some of the positions and postures of the exercises? And so how you structure even your warm-ups and your cool downs is kind of based on that. So if you want to kind of talk about the big boxes you want to check, now boiling the checklist within the checklist, like the checklist of what are the mobility considerations, because most of your clientele in those classes is probably right in the sweet spot we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, so, one thing that we've noticed, and even when we were, we met, for those of you that don't know, we met through FMS, and, approximately 60% of the people, 60 to 70% of the people have mobility restrictions, right? And we know that that's really the same thing that we see in our group training population. So we've noticed that, and I'm going to get very, very general. We've got tight hips, which, again, tight hips is just, it just bothers me to say it, but let's just say a lot of our adult population has tight hips, tight T-spine and shoulders, right? So we know that that is a common scenario. So we design our warm-ups based off of that information. So because here's the reality of it. If you meet someone and you take them through an evaluation, and we talked about this, in another sort of live, is I ask my people right out of the gate, hey, listen, there's a couple things I need you to work on. If I give you 2 to 3 exercises to do at home, will you do it? And someone will be like, yeah, cool, I'll do it. And that's awesome. Someone will be like, nope, I'm not going to do it at all. So, and that's okay, because listen, I'm not going to waste my time, sending them a whole bunch of stuff that they're not going to do. But what we have to do is we still have to prepare them accordingly for what's to come. So if we are lunging on a certain day, we're going to make sure we hit ankles. We're going to make sure that we, hit our half kneeling hip flexor stretches, maybe our couch stretch to open up the anterior hip and all of that stuff. So we've got the sort of the mobility and the warm-up component is really, really huge for us, because most adults do not warm up properly. And the first thing that we do with everybody is put them on a bike, or maybe if they can jump rope. We actually let them choose, because asking someone to jump rope that is not comfortable with jumping rope, or maybe they have some, maybe they are recently had a child and jumping rope is just not appropriate for them because there could be some pelvic floor stuff, etc. So we start off and we got to get them warmed up. And I always tell people, you should be sweating by the end of the warm up. Like that should be something that you should focus on. So moving well, and moving well enough that whatever stressors you apply to your system is going to result in a positive adaptation. That is really what we're looking for. And then we can start to just dial in all of those other subtleties of it. But we try to make the training as simple as possible. But you need repetition as well, because in order to see those results, we need to have exposure to those various exercises and various things that we do. So variability is nice, right? It's nice to add new things in, but at the same time, we need a certain amount of consistency to make sure that we're making progress and we're not just throwing a bunch of things against the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah, and I had a post earlier in the week, and probably the 2 biggest areas that as people get older that they screw up in their training is their warm up and their cool down, right? The warm up in terms of preparing themselves for the challenge of that workout, whether it be addressing the mobility stuff like you talked about, the ankles, the hips, the T-spine that are generally stiff in most people as we get older, because there's so much more time spending in a seated position, or also understanding and appreciating on both ends of your workout, the impact of the autonomic nervous system, and I talk about this a ton, is that, that fight or flight versus that rest and recover, and that balance of the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic system, and that realize that that population is also generally more your higher stress population. And so because of that, they're coming in probably already redlined because they just sat in rush hour traffic. They're either coming before work where they got to rush out to get to work on time and all the stress that they're going to jump into, or they're coming out of work and they're just dealing with all that stress and they're redlined. Now, if I go and crank up the music to full blast and it's AC/DC pounding and it's going to be just, 10-yard flying sprints, and it's going to be, whipping med balls as their warm-up program, I'm putting the pedal down even further and redlining them even more. That I may need to just kind of reset them from a psychological, from a physiological standpoint, and really get them to focus on some breathing. And then especially when they're done, and this goes for everybody, your recovery starts the second that your last rep ended. And so resetting that and down-regulating that nervous system. And there's actually a great piece in the one of the latest Andrew Huberman podcast, who I'm a huge fan of. He had on Andy Galpin, and they were talking about all things exercise and talking about the cool down is just kind of awesome, and the impact of just taking 5 minutes of exaggerated exhale breathing, good deep breathing, and how much that's going to impact your recovery. Because again, that's one of the biggest factors, is that the difference between training that 20-something and that 40-something is their recoverability. They don't have the physiological reserves. Like you have a great way of talking about having in the course, you talk about the wide lanes. They don't have a lot of variability of that wide lane. They have a narrow lane that if you push too hard, they're going to crash into stuff. So recoverability is the biggest thing. Like I joked in the post, is that, like, I remember when I was 20-something, like we wouldn't leave for the bar or the club till 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and then drink and then go to the diner on the way home, and I'd get up and go to work at 9 a.m. And I don't know how I did it, because like now if I stay up past 10, one night, I'm wrecked for the week, right? And that's your recoverability.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we talk about recovery, I think, and I get this a lot because I work with a lot of grapplers and combat athletes, and I can't tell you how many people are asking me about recovery. And you know what they always ask me? What's the best massage gun? What do you think about cryo? What do you think about infrared saunas? What do you think about this? And those aren't inherently bad. And we've had various discussions on this. But, I tell people all the time, like, sleep, hydration, nutrition are the most important things that you can focus on when it comes to a recovery standpoint. But at the same time, not doing dumb shit in the first place is probably the best place to start as well. And because everybody wants that quick fix, right? They want, give me a piece of information that'll fix what I'm trying to do right now. And the problem is that, learning how to hydrate properly, whether or not if you're sweating a lot, maybe you need electrolytes. Maybe your electrolyte balance is completely off, and that's the missing link, right? Maybe it's your sleep, and you're not going to sleep on a consistent time. Maybe you're underfueling for workouts, or maybe you're eating too close. So those are all those things that it's a little bit of trial and error, but everybody wants they want the solution. They want the easy solution, right? But the problem is that jamming a massage gun in your hip is not it makes you feel like you're doing something, but it's a temporary piece of relief. It's like taking Advil. It's like, yeah, cool, I feel a little bit better, but all you're doing is managing the symptoms. You're not actually getting to the origin of why you're feeling a certain way to begin with. And the whole no pain, no gain, pain is weakness leaving the body, no days off. That stuff is just a bunch of horseshit, because I work with some of the best fighters in the world, and every Sunday you better believe they're sitting on their butt doing nothing, because they know that they're going to be doing 2 to 3 sessions a day until their fight comes up. So it's the recovery component is huge. And I think when people start to become aware of when they need to slow it down, or when they feel pretty good. I mean, listen, I can wake up and I can tell if I've slept well. Yeah, I do. I wear an Oura ring, and that will give me some feedback on certain things. But even my wife, she's like, she'll wake up and she's like, oh, I didn't sleep great. I had a stressful week. I'm not going to train. I'm going to go for a walk instead. And for a lot of people, they look at that walk as they're quitting, right? They look at it as like, the walk isn't important. It's just, I should be in the gym crushing it. It's like, no. That walk is necessary, because that's setting you up for your next set. And that's the thing people don't understand is, guys, there is no end. It's not like everybody goes to the gym and the people that are fit are like, I made it. I'm fit and I'm here. Like it's kind of like in what's Elf when he's like, congratulations, you did it. You had the best coffee in the world. It's like, it's not like you walk into a gym and everybody has hit their goals. The people that are in quote unquote great shape, they're still going because there is no end. The end is when you're dead.
So one of the things that you kind of just jumped over, and that is when we talk about recovery, and actually that was the presentation I just did it for the ACSM conference, was talking about recovery, and I said the best way to maximize your recovery is to train better, train smarter, right? It's to not kill yourself, because if you're basically destroying yourself and then use a massage gun so it feels better and then go back and destroy yourself again, then you're in a really bad cycle, right? And it's not that massage guns are bad. I have one sitting right here that I'll use from time to time. It's just saying if I need that after every workout, then it's the workout that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
It's not that the gun is the solution. And the number one recovery tool more than anything else is sleep. And if you did a survey, and I think there is some pretty good data, and I forget, it's pretty scary numbers, but I just know anecdotally, talk to just about anybody 40 plus and ask them, hey, how's your sleep? And I know it's part of the intake questionnaire. We have intake questionnaires that we share when you take our course, is what's your sleep like, and asking a bunch of questions about their sleep. And I can tell you, it's a lot harder to find somebody who gets good sleep than it is to find somebody who's not. And then you add it to the fact that I don't know how many people I can tell you that I know that are in their 40s who are using sleep masks because they've been diagnosed with sleep apnea and so forth, and say, okay, well, what do I do about that? And in the conference I just gave, tons of questions on insomnia and sleep, and it's a significant issue. And I recommend it all the time. Is Dr. Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep. He's brilliant, and I've recommended that book to countless people, and I've had multiple people tell me it changed their lives, because one guy is a good friend of mine. He's a type A guy, and he said, I thought I was doing the right thing. I would get up at 4:45 every morning, and I'm the hard driver, and I get into the gym and I push myself, and I couldn't, but I constantly was having nagging injuries, and I constantly never really felt as good as I thought I should for the work that I put in. And then I realized, like, maybe getting up at 4:45 wasn't the best formula, and that your training is only as good as your recoverability. It's a stress and adaptation cycle. So recoverability and sleep is a major factor. And if you're not asking about your client's sleep, you're leaving a ton of information on the table that's going to drive your programming. So getting them to understand better sleep, first better sleep awareness. So if Oura rings and Whoop bands do nothing else, it gives them better sleep awareness. Like, holy crap, I didn't realize how awful my sleep was. Most people are already aware of it. They know it, right? But if they didn't know it, now that will draw some awareness to it. And they also can start to learn certain correlations to say, you know what, when I have that second glass of wine, boom, my sleep is terrible. Or when I eat too close to bed, or when I pull out that iPad and I'm in bed and I'm not, and then what does that have to do with training? Well, it has everything to do with training, because now you show up the next day and, we have a whole section in the course. I show the kind of 3-minute recovery readiness screen that I do, and I see your readiness scores are crap. Your breath hold time is down, your motor control is down, your grip strength is down, and it's like, guess what you just did? You just robbed from today's workout, because now I have to dial down today's workout because of the habits you had last night leading to your bedtime. And so, like, this isn't something that you and I were taught in exercise science class. Like, there's a lot of things they didn't prepare us for, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's having this conversation about, your sleep habits, to, like we joked the other day, I told him, was telling Mike the story how I just got out of working with a team and how to break up a fight in the hallway. And I'm like, and in college, they taught me about the Krebs cycle. They didn't prepare me for this. So, so in terms of those things, the other factor that's very different as we get older is hormonal factors, right? And considering those things, and considering, okay, for females, all the changes that they may be going through, and how is that affecting things, whether it's their sleep, whether it's recovery, whether it's any of these physiological factors, or it's all of us, especially males, who are losing testosterone and growth hormone after age 35. There's a drop off there. Now we can stem the tide of that drop off a little bit with training that they found, but nonetheless, it's going to be a drop off, and that's going to affect your expectations of your training result, right? You can't lose body fat or slap on muscle quite as easily at 45 than you could at 25.
Yeah, absolutely. And I the hormonal talk is directly tied to sleep. Um, Lack of sleep for men, again, testosterone levels are going to go and they're going to plummet if you're getting 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. The grind and all that stuff that people say is like the key to success. That's a bunch of BS. All it does is make you tired. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go out there and work hard, but if you really want to be as productive as possible, you need to plan your sleep patterns, and you need to do what's important to get you there in the first place. And I was having this talk the other day with my wife, and we were talking about people going in and exercising. And they think they get a really good workout. Well, it's like, and one of the reasons why they thought they got a really good workout is because they felt tired after. It's like, well, were you tired because you didn't sleep to begin with? Were you tired because you were underfueled? And those two things, yeah, you'll make it the workout seems hard, but was it productive? Because just because something feels hard, it doesn't mean it's productive. And going back to those type A individuals that are go, 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 they think more is better, but more is not better. Better is better, right? So I'd rather see a type A individual go to the gym 3 days a week and have a day or two off in between, and really focus on being as productive as possible on those 3 days, rather than trying to you know make it and survive 5 days of crushing yourself. And it just it's one of those things where it's so hard to break people of those habits, because we live in a society. It's just go, 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 and we glorify the hard workouts. People look at all of these motivational people and like, oh, you got to go crush your goals, you got to do this and that. It's like, yeah, that's good stuff and that's great for motivation, but the reality is that not everybody can go out and run 15 miles with David Goggins every morning, right? Like, that's just how it works. And I understand what people are trying to get with that. But again, we have to look at the reality of what we're dealing with when it comes to actually training these individuals, because it's a very, very complex scenario. And I think as strength and conditioning coaches and as trainers, if we are not looking at all of these other things, we're doing our clients a disservice, right? I mean, that's, if there's one thing that I can say that going back to the course, that people are gonna get out of this course, is we're going to teach you to ask the right questions, so you can get you can get better and more clear information. So when it is time to get the nuts and the bolts together for that program, you're going to do a much better job of it, because you have that pertinent information. It's like, one more analogy and then I'll shut my mouth. It's like, it's like telling someone, hey, in order to eat healthy, you need to eat food. Well, that's a very, very vague term. Or what if you say, oh, you should eat, I hear potatoes are really good. I have a buddy that's allergic to potatoes. So if I just told someone to go eat potatoes and they have an allergy, they're going to get sick as a dog, and they're probably going to go in anaphylactic shock. So again, we need to be clear with the advice that we're giving. And we need to make sure that there's context to everything that we do, because especially with social media, even right now, someone's going to probably pick up a piece of this and be like, Mike doesn't like David Goggins or something like that, right? That's not what I'm saying. My point is that we need to take the time to learn more about the individual and what they're currently experiencing or going through in their life. And that's going to allow us to, again, make better decisions.
So what do you have against David Goggins?
Nothing. I don't want
to. Yeah, no, I want him on my team.
Yeah.
So two things you brought up that are points that we need to address is one is the education piece, and realizing there's a lot more education involved, especially with this group, and I'll touch on another reason why in a minute. But then the other key point you brought up is time. These are people that are very, very time crunched, whether it's because of home responsibilities, whether it's because of work responsibilities, family responsibilities. Time is the biggest challenge. And one of the questions we ask, and the key questions, what's your biggest challenge? And 9 times out of 10, it's time, right? They don't have the time to do it. Now, we can argue if they really don't have the time to do it, because I always say, if that's your biggest barrier, let me audit one of your days, right? And I bet you I can find some time in there, because you tell me you have no time, but yet I see people waiting for 40 minutes, in their car for $8 coffee at Starbucks, and then they've seen every episode of every show on Netflix, but yet they have no time. but time is a factor. And so the education piece of the time is one of the pieces of research I lean on quite a bit. Is, I don't know if you've seen the one where they took people where they had one group did 30 minutes of activity continuous. Another group did 3 10-minute bouts of activity, right? Spread throughout the day. Well, guess which group had better results and longer adherence? The 3 10-minute bouts, right? Got the same physiological result, but a lot of things happen. It was much higher adherence because it's an easier thing to take a bite out of. I have 3 small movement bites as opposed to I got to drive to the gym. I got to find a parking spot. I'm going to have to get changed. I'm going to have to work out. Then I got to shower. Then I got to get back. Like that, I don't have that hour and a half in my day. But if I say I'm going to get up in the morning, I'm going to go for, a 10-minute walk, or I'm going to jump on my exercise bike for 10 minutes, or I'm going to go and do, 10 minutes of stuff there. And then at lunch, I'm going to go for a walk around the office complex. And then after work, I'm going to go and I'm going to get, a 10-minute run, or I'm going to jump rope or whatever. That's a lot easier for somebody to take a bite out of and negotiate that time than saying, I'm going to do this big half-hour block. So you're getting better adherence, which is, we talk all the time about the greatest things that we can give you is awareness and habits. And so those 2 things kind of get checked by getting people to understand this is not what workouts are. This is what you've been sold it is. You got to go to a special place that has special shiny machines, and you have to wear a special outfit, and you have to do it for a certain amount of time for it to consider and count as a workout. No, you can go for a 10-minute walk with your dog, and that will actually count as well, right? So that's in terms of the time component. Now, the education piece is also realize that there's different thought processes when you have the maturity of someone who's 40, 50 something years old, because, when you're 20, you can't really map out in your head that you're ever going to be 60, right? It's just not going to happen, right? You're just worried. You're like, the furthest you could think is Saturday night. But as you get older, you're starting to see whether it's because you see the people around you changing, right? And you get together with your friends and wow, a lot more gray hair at this table. Right. Or, I went out to dinner with a bunch of people in my age group, a bunch of friends, and all of a sudden the menus come out and everybody's got their flashlight on their phone and they're pulling out reading glasses. Right. I'm like, holy shit, am I as old as these people? And you start to realize, wow, there's a decline happening here. And then, or you have someone that's caring for an elderly parent and they see, okay, well, what are my fears now? My fears of falling, right? I know that once you fall, my grandmother, 94 years old, just fell last week. She's in the hospital. She broke her femur, right? And thankfully she made it out of surgery and she survived, because a lot of times you don't, right? Once you fall, it's a rapid decline after that. And so what are the things? So maybe I need to address more about my balance, and I need to address more of my body awareness and those types of things. And can I get back up off the floor if I fall down? And what are some of the things that we can deal with there? And those are going to be some real considerations. And then there's the other real considerations of like, hey, I'm on the back 9 here. Like, how can I possibly extend my longevity a little bit here? Because I'm scared that, when this is going to end, and say, okay, well, how can you proactively try to do that? And Dr. Peter Attia talks a lot about your, longevity and what are the things you can do, whether it's zone 2 exercise or whether it's better eating habits or any of these things that can help put some coins in the bank that'll hopefully give you some more reserve down the road, that the things you're doing now at 40, 50 are going to pay huge dividends when you get to be 70, 80, 90 and lead to hopefully more independence and more freedom within your everyday.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you mentioned, going to dinner with friends. We all know someone that we can think of that is our age that looks like they're 20 years older and that acts like they're 20 years older. And again, this isn't a bashing session. It's just the reality of it. 40, 45 looks very, very different to a lot of different people. But I will say this, and I think we'll close with a little story that I'm going to share with one of my clients. And this guy was 83 years old. His name was Russ. And Russ came to me. He spent the previous 3 to 5 years taking care of his wife because she was fairly ill. And during that time, he let himself go a little bit too. And he was a, ex-football player, big guy. He was, 250, 260, 270, maybe even 280. I'm not really sure. But he came to me he was actually referred to me by a really local, well-known strength and conditioning coach because he lived locally. And I remember talking to him, and you know, he had played football in the military and with the Army, and he is an amazing guy, had some amazing stories and the wisdom that this individual had. But I remember him saying, he goes, I wish when I was younger, I spent more time on moving a little bit more and just being stronger. He never said anything about high intensity interval training. He never said anything about Tabatas. He just said, I wish that I focused on movement and moving well and getting stronger, because he said if he did that, he would have had a better quality of life down the road. And that is something that it's going to stick with me forever, because I don't think you're going to hear anybody that's in their 60s, 70s, and 80s saying, I wish I did more Tabatas. It's just really not how it is. And again, there's nothing wrong with, you know, using some sort of metabolic conditioning to you know, to get you fit. But again, when we're looking at the two things that would probably have the biggest impact on the longevity. And when I say longevity, I'm talking about fruitful longevity, not just living to you know, an older age. I'm talking about living and enjoying life and living a fruitful life is, you know, being able to get up and down off the ground by yourself, and being strong enough to do the things like you want to do, like use the restroom by yourself, or pick up your grandchildren, or, you know, reach down and be able to tie your own shoe, or be able to get that really, really heavy pan or pot out of the, you know, out of the cupboard. So, you know, those characteristics, those things that I think are going to last, are moving well and staying strong. If you just focus on those two things for the rest of your life, you're going to be in a really good shape. And now if you want to layer on that other cardiovascular stuff on top of it, and I do believe that everybody should be doing some aerobic work. You mentioned zone 2. That's going to be very, very important from a heart health standpoint. But do the things that you know that are going to help the quality of life down the road. And listen, here's the reality. It's not going to get easier as you age. So you should start now. You should have started yesterday.
Yeah, and I'll kind of spin that a little bit and kind of wrap back around to the other reason why we did this and did it this week is there's some very cool things happening that are kind of showing that what we thought about age is really being redefined, right? And so what we thought 45 is to say, or 55, or any of these things are, like, the best example is your guy Tom Brady, right? He's arguably still the best quarterback in football in his mid 40s. And so he's kind of redefining age. You look at LeBron James and what he's done, you know, and he's in his mid 30s playing, you know, almost 11 months a year of competitive basketball for the last 18, 19 years. Look at what some of the top people on the PGA Tour are doing. You're seeing people redefining age and what the limitations are. And so if anything encapsulates all the things you need to consider in this talk, and I'll kind of wrap it with this, is one of my intentions, because we do a whole, if you're just starting to follow us, we do a different theme each week, and we have posts every day leading up to that theme. Well, one of my goals was to have a post was going to be either yesterday or today, is I was going to shoot a video of some of my training stuff, right? And what I want to do is one of the topics we have in an upcoming week is going to be talking about training minimums, and we're going to talk about some of the people out there and what they've said for training minimums, like you should be able to do X, you know, in terms of body weight bench press. You should be able to do this relative to your body weight for a certain number of reps, and all these different minimums that we, you know, and optimums we want to achieve. Well, I wanted to shoot a video of myself doing all those things, and to kind of redefine like what somebody's expectations are, to say, look, I'm doing all of this at my age. And it's not that I sit around all day like most people think trainers do. Oh, don't sit around and work out all day, right? I've been working, Mike and I've been working on getting this course out, and on top of working 12, 14-hour days the last 3 months. And I'm still maintaining that level of fitness, just being really smart about it. And the reason for the timing of it is it wasn't going to be, and I'm still going to do the post, and I'll tell you why I didn't do it. I didn't do it because last night we had torrential rains here in New Jersey, and our drain broke, and ended up my workout yesterday was 12 hours of shop vacuuming instead of shooting the video that I wanted to do. And the video wasn't going to be, hey, look how great I am here and showing off. You know, I'm not Liver King. But the whole idea was to say, in the timing of it, is this Sunday, I turn a monumental number. This Sunday I turned 50, right? And I wanted to say, like, at this age, I still will do this shit. And I work hard just to get to be an average athlete at best. Right? The Giants and Yankees never came looking for me, unfortunately, as much as I wanted them to when I was 12. And so with that, like, if you do this smart, you can still train pretty hard and accomplish some pretty cool things. And I'm not winning any strongman competitions or powerlifting competitions or bodybuilding shows anytime soon. But it's way beyond that group of friends that I talked about before. We tried to have dinner a couple of weeks ago. 4 people bailed at the last minute because, you know, one had arthritis, another one had a neck issue, another one had this, and they're all roughly in my age bracket. And it's like they can't even get it to go to dinner, let alone do a bodyweight farmer's walk, right? So, but how is it that one person personifies what 50 looks like versus another? And that's really your choice, right? And being smart about it. And that's really what the course is about, is how do I really get good at designing programs? So with that, I'll kind of let it lead into a little promo here that you can take over, Mike, and I'll add in anything else at the end.
All right, sorry, just cutting off for a second. So guys, a couple things here. For those of you that don't know, we do have our Principles of Program Design website is up and it is live. Okay, we want you to go ahead and check that out. We're still doing a few tweaks in it, but it is ready to go if you guys want to check it out. You know, we appreciate your support, and at the same time, we do have a course coming up in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, right by Philadelphia, and that's something that we'd love to see you guys there. We're going to be covering a lot of in-depth information at that live course. Eric and I will be raring to go with that. But if you're really interested and you want to learn more, go ahead and check out Principles of Program Design. You can get some ideas on what we're going to cover and all the various things that you can learn from us. And we have a few things coming out soon, as far as a few other teasers that we're going to have. And we also sent out an email today with more information and links. So if you want to get on that email list, you can just shoot us an email at principlesofprogramdesign@gmail.com, and we can make sure to add you to our mailing list, and we can go from there. Anything else you want to add, Eric?
Or you could just shoot us a DM, shoot us a direct message, and jump on the mailing list, get more course information. Our link is in our bio, as well as if you have questions you want us to answer, please shout them out. And that's how we want to do this each week. Each week we do this Friday live. This week was a little bit later because I had to do the ACSM conference, but we do it Fridays at 1 every week. Next week's topic is core training, which first we'll break down what that even means, and then we'll give you some of our favorite, for lack of a better term, ab exercises, but also explain all the things that go into core function and what it's going to take to get your core functioning optimally. So that's going to be next week. So follow all the series of posts. And if you happen to miss this or you want to share this with a friend, what we do is after this gets done, gets uploaded, and later today you'll be able to access this on our Principles of Program Design feed. You'll be able to find that in there as well. So we have a backlog of all of them. We've been doing this now for a couple months, so we have a ton of really good stuff on there talking about a bunch of different topics. And so if you have any ideas for topics, you have any ideas for questions, shoot us a DM. If not, please share with your friends. Please come check us out at principlesofprogramdesign.com and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
All right, guys, we'll see you. Appreciate you tuning in.